Dorothy Washington pushed open the heavy glass door of First National Bank. Her worn brown shoes squeaked softly on the shiny marble floor. The bank looked like a palace. Tall white columns, golden lights hanging from the ceiling, and walls so clean they sparkled like diamonds. Dorothy was 90 years old. Her back was bent like a question mark, and she walked with a wooden cane that clicked with every step. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple blue dress with tiny flowers on it, the kind you might find at a thrift store. Her purse was old and patched with tape on one corner. But her eyes were different. They were sharp and bright, like she could see right through you, all the way to your heart. She walked slowly to the counter, where a young woman sat behind glass. "Good morning, dear," Dorothy said with a gentle smile. "I just want to check my balance, please." The young woman looked up. "Her name tag," said Janet. She stared at Dorothy's old dress and patched purse. Her nose wrinkled like she smelled something bad. "Ma'am, you can use the ATM outside," Janet said, pointing toward the door without looking Dorothy in the eye. "I prefer to speak with someone," Dorothy said calmly. "It's been a while since I checked." Janet sighed loudly, like Dorothy was wasting her precious time. "Fine. Account number?" Before Dorothy could answer, a loud voice boomed across the marble floor. Well, what do we have here?" Everyone in the bank turned to look. A tall man in an expensive gray suit strutted toward them. His shoes were so shiny you could see your face in them. His watch glittered with diamonds. His smile was wide, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind of smile a cat makes before it catches a mouse. This was Jonathan Mitchell, the bank president. He was 52 years old and loved two things: money and making people feel small. Behind him walked three men in fancy suits, his special VIP clients. They were there for a private meeting. But Jonathan couldn't resist the entertainment he saw before him. Janet, Jonathan said, shaking his head like he was disappointed. "Are we really going to waste bank time on this?" He waved his hand at Dorothy like she was a piece of trash. The VIP clients chuckled behind him. Dorothy stood perfectly still. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She just watched Jonathan with those sharp, bright eyes. "I'm here to check my balance," she repeated, her voice steady as stone. Jonathan threw his head back and laughed. A mean, ugly laugh that echoed off the marble walls. "Your balance." He laughed harder. "Lady, you probably have $12.37. Maybe less." He turned to his VIP friends. "Gentlemen, this is what happens when we let just anyone walk through our doors." The clients laughed nervously. Some people in line looked away, embarrassed. Others took out their phones and started recording. Janet, the young teller, giggled behind her hand. But Dorothy didn't move. She planted her cane firmly on the marble floor. "Young man," she said quietly, "I will check my balance, and I will do it right here, right now. I'm not going anywhere." Jonathan's smile faded. His face turned red. Nobody said no to Jonathan Mitchell. Not in his bank. Not on his marble floor. "Security!" he shouted, snapping his fingers. Two security guards appeared, looking uncomfortable. "Escort this woman out," Jonathan commanded. "She's disturbing our clients." "I haven't raised my voice," Dorothy said calmly. "I haven't caused any trouble. I simply want to check my balance." "Ma'am, please." One security guard said gently. He looked embarrassed. "Maybe you should." "No," Dorothy said firmly. The word hung in the air like thunder. The crowd grew bigger. More people stopped what they were doing. More phones pointed at the scene. The whispers got louder. Jonathan's face turned even redder. He stepped closer to Dorothy, towering over her tiny frame. "Listen, old woman," he hissed. "I don't know what nursing home you escaped from, but this is First National Bank. We serve people of quality, people of wealth. Not," he looked her up and down with disgust, "not people like you." Dorothy tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Jonathan Allen Mitchell," she said softly. Jonathan froze. His eyes went wide. "How do you know my—" "Born April 17th, 1974. Dorothy continued, her voice still calm and steady. Your father was Robert Mitchell. Your mother was Helen. You lived on Maple Street in the blue house with the white fence. Jonathan's mouth fell open. The VIP clients stopped laughing. Janet stopped giggling. Everyone was silent now, watching, listening. You had a sister named Caroline, Dorothy said. Sweet girl. She used to draw pictures of butterflies. How do you? Jonathan stammered, his confidence crumbling like a sandcastle hit by a wave. Dorothy took one small step forward. She looked up at him with those piercing eyes. I was your sister's third-grade teacher, Jonathan. I taught at Riverside Elementary for 42 years. She paused. I remember Caroline very well. I also remember the bruises. The silence in the bank was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Jonathan's face went from red to white. His hands started shaking. The bruises she tried to hide, Dorothy continued, her voice gentle but firm. The days she came to school hungry. The parent-teacher conferences your father never attended because he was too busy, too important, too wealthy to care. A woman in the crowd gasped. I remember, Dorothy said, how your family treated people they thought were beneath them. I see you learned those lessons well. Jonathan couldn't speak. He stood there frozen as his past crashed into his present like a freight train. Now, Dorothy said, turning back to Janet at the counter, I would like to check my balance, please. Her cane clicked once on the marble floor, and the whole world seemed to hold its breath. Janet's hands trembled as she reached for her keyboard. The whole bank was silent except for the hum of the computers and the tick-tick-tick of the big clock on the wall. Jonathan stood frozen like a statue. His face had gone pale. Sweat dripped down his forehead. The 3 VIP clients behind him shuffled their feet awkwardly, not sure where to look. Account number, ma'am, Janet whispered. Dorothy recited a series of numbers from memory, clear and steady. Janet typed them in. Her eyes squinted at the screen. Then her eyes went wide. Her mouth dropped open. Is there a problem? Dorothy asked gently. I need to get my manager, Janet stammered, pushing back from her chair, so fast it rolled and hit the wall behind her. That won't be necessary, said a deep voice from across the lobby. Everyone turned. A tall black man in an elegant navy suit walked toward them. He was in his 60s, with silver hair at his temples and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. This was Gerald Thompson, the senior vice president, one of the most powerful men in the entire bank. Mr. Thompson, Jonathan sputtered, trying to pull himself together. Sir, I was just handling a minor disturbance. You were humiliating a customer, Gerald said quietly. His voice was soft, but it cut through the air like a sword. In front of witnesses. In front of cameras. He gestured at all the phones still recording. Jonathan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Gerald walked straight to Dorothy. Then he did something that made everyone gasp. He bowed his head respectfully. Mrs. Washington, he said warmly, it's been too long. Dorothy's stern face softened into a real smile, the first smile she'd shown since entering the bank. Gerald Thompson, she said with affection in her voice. Look at you, all grown up, all successful. I'm so proud of you. You know each other? Jonathan croaked. Gerald turned to face the crowd. His voice was strong and clear so everyone could hear. Mrs. Dorothy Washington was my 5th grade teacher, Gerald announced. She was the teacher who believed in me when nobody else did. When I was a poor kid with holes in my shoes and an empty stomach, she made sure I had lunch. When I struggled with reading, she stayed after school every single day for 6 months to help me. His voice cracked with emotion. She told me I could be anything I wanted to be. She helped me apply for scholarships. She wrote recommendation letters. She came to my college graduation, even though she had to take 2 buses to get there. He looked at Dorothy with tears in his eyes. Mrs. Washington, you changed my life. Dorothy patted his arm gently. You changed your own life, Gerald. I just pointed you in the right direction. Jonathan looked like he might throw up. His VIP clients were slowly backing away from him, distancing themselves from the disaster. "Mrs. Washington," Gerald said, turning to Janet. "May I see your account information, please?" Janet nodded frantically and turned the computer screen toward Gerald. He looked at it. His eyebrows rose. He looked again, leaning closer. "Mrs. Washington," he said slowly, "would you like me to read your balance aloud, or would you prefer privacy?" Dorothy's eyes twinkled. "Oh, I think everyone here has earned the right to know. After all, Mr. Mitchell was very concerned about whether I belong in this bank." Gerald took a deep breath. When he spoke, his voice carried across the entire marble lobby. "Mrs. Dorothy Washington has 4 accounts with First National Bank. Her checking account contains $43,217. Her savings account contains $162,000. Her investment account contains $950,000. The crowd gasped. Phones were pointed at Dorothy now, capturing her calm, dignified face. "And her trust account," Gerald continued, his voice rising with pride, "contains $16,800,000. The silence that followed was deafening. Someone dropped their keys. The clatter echoed like an explosion. Jonathan's knees buckled. He grabbed a nearby column to keep from falling. That's impossible," he whispered. She's just an old what, Mr. Mitchell?" Gerald's voice was sharp now, angry. "An old black woman? An old teacher? An old person who doesn't dress fancy enough for your marble floors." Jonathan couldn't answer. He looked like he might cry. Dorothy spoke then, her voice filling the space with quiet power. "I taught for 42 years, she said. "I never made much money, but I was careful. I saved every extra penny. I invested wisely. I lived simply." She looked around at all the faces watching her. "I didn't save that money for myself. I don't need marble floors or diamond watches." She pointed her cane at the ground, and it clicked like a judge's gavel. "I saved that money for children like Gerald, for children who are poor, who are hungry, who are told they don't belong, for children whose skin is dark or whose clothes are old or whose parents work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on." Her voice grew stronger. "Every year, my money sends 25 children to college. Every year, for the last 15 years. That's 375 young people who became doctors, teachers, engineers, nurses, and lawyers because someone believed in them." Tears ran down Gerald's face now. He didn't try to hide them. "And you," Dorothy said, turning to Jonathan, "you wanted to throw me out like garbage. You laughed at me. You mocked me. You tried to make me feel small." She took one step closer to him. "But I am not small, Jonathan Mitchell. I am standing on the shoulders of every child I ever taught, every life I ever changed, every dream I ever helped come true. That makes me very tall indeed." Jonathan collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. Catherine Petton, a board member who had been watching from the balcony above, came down the stairs quickly, her heels clicking rapidly. "Mr. Mitchell," she said coldly, "you are suspended, effective immediately. Security, please escort him to his office to collect his personal items. The board will convene an emergency meeting within the hour." The security guards, the same ones who had been ordered to remove Dorothy, now stood on either side of Jonathan. But they were gentle with him, just as they had been gentle with her. Dorothy watched as Jonathan was led away. She didn't look triumphant or happy. She just looked tired. "Mrs. Washington," Catherine said, approaching respectfully, "on behalf of First National Bank, I offer you our deepest, most sincere apology. This behavior is inexcusable." Dorothy nodded. "Apology accepted. But I hope you understand this isn't just about me." "I do understand," Catherine said, "and I promise you things are going to change." Dorothy smiled softly. "Good, because our children deserve better. All of them." 3 months later, Dorothy Washington walked through the doors of First National Bank again. But this time, everything was different. The marble floors were still shiny. The golden lights still sparkled. But now, on the wall near the entrance, there was a large wooden plaque with golden letters, "Dignity First." Everyone welcome. Below it was a photo, Dorothy's photo, smiling gently, Mrs. Washington. Janet called out, waving from behind the counter. The same Janet who had been rude that first day, but now her smile was genuine, warm, and full of respect. "Good morning, Janet." Dorothy said kindly, "How is your mother doing? I heard she wasn't feeling well." Janet's eyes filled with tears. "She's better. Thank you for asking. And thank you for the flowers you sent." She was so touched. Dorothy had forgiven Janet. She had forgiven Jonathan, too, though he no longer worked at the bank. Forgiveness, she believed, was not about forgetting. It was about giving people the chance to grow. Gerald appeared from his office, beaming. "Mrs. Washington, right on time. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. That's right. Dorothy was now on the bank's board of directors. After that terrible day 3 months ago, the board had investigated everything. They discovered that Jonathan had treated many customers poorly, especially people who looked different from him or who weren't wealthy. Several complaints had been ignored. Several good employees had quit because of the toxic culture he created. Jonathan was fired, not just suspended, fired. But Dorothy had asked the board to do something else, something surprising. Send him to counseling, she had suggested. Help him understand why he acts the way he does. Help him heal from whatever hurt him as a child. Punishment without growth teaches nothing. The board had agreed. Jonathan was getting help now. He had even written Dorothy a letter. A real apology, not the fake kind people write when they're just trying to avoid trouble. He was learning. Slowly, painfully, but learning. Dorothy walked with Gerald to the conference room. On the way, they passed a new area of the bank that hadn't existed before. It was called the Washington Educational Resource Center. Inside, there were computers where people could learn about money, how to save it, how to invest it, how to make it grow. There were free classes on Saturdays. There were volunteers who helped people open their first bank accounts. There were even bilingual counselors who could help families who spoke Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, and 5 other languages. And in the center of the room stood a statue, not marble or gold, but made of bronze. It showed a teacher helping a child read a book. The plaque at the base read, "Education is a key that unlocks every door. Dorothy Washington." "It's beautiful," Dorothy whispered every time she saw it, though she had seen it many times now. The board meeting began. Around the long wooden table sat 12 people. Men and women of different ages, different races, different backgrounds. This was new, too. Before, the board had been all men, almost all white, almost all from wealthy families. Catherine Petton, now the interim president, stood at the head of the table. "Thanks to Mrs. Washington's guidance," Catherine announced, "our scholarship program has expanded. We're now sending 50 students to college each year, not 25. We've partnered with 15 community organizations. We've hired staff that actually reflects the community we serve." She clicked a button, and numbers appeared on the screen. And surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, our business is up, way up. Turns out when you treat people with dignity and respect, when you actually serve your community instead of judging it, people want to do business with you. Everyone around the table nodded and smiled. Gerald added, "We've received over 300 applications from young people wanting to join our new mentorship program. 300. Kids who want to learn banking, finance, and business, many from neighborhoods that banks used to avoid." Dorothy listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap. Her cane rested against her chair. "Mrs. Washington," Catherine said, "would you like to say anything?" Dorothy stood slowly. She was 90 years old, but when she spoke, her voice was strong. "I spent 42 years teaching children," she began. "And the most important lesson I ever taught wasn't about math or reading or history. It was about dignity." She looked around the table at each face. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity. It doesn't matter if they're rich or poor, black or white, young or old, fancy or simple. Every person has value. Every person has worth. Every person deserves respect. Her eyes grew misty. When Jonathan Mitchell laughed at me that day, he wasn't just laughing at an old woman. He was laughing at every person who had ever been made to feel small, every person who had ever been judged by their appearance, every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. She paused, letting her words sink in. But here's what he didn't understand. True wealth isn't in bank accounts. True wealth is in the lives we touch, the children we teach, the kindness we show, the dignity we give and receive. She smiled softly. This bank is different now, not because of me, but because good people like Gerald and Catherine and all of you chose to do better. You chose dignity over dollars, people over profits, and that is what will make this institution truly great. The room erupted in applause. Several people wiped tears from their eyes. After the meeting, Dorothy stood by the window, looking out at the busy street. Children walked by with their parents. Teenagers laughed together. An elderly man fed pigeons on the sidewalk. Gerald came and stood beside her. "You know," he said quietly, "I was that hungry kid with holes in his shoes. And now I'm helping make sure no kid has to feel that way again. That's because of you." Dorothy patted his hand. "No, dear, that's because of you. I just reminded you of what was already inside you, goodness, strength, and love." She picked up her cane and turned to leave. "Mrs. Washington," Gerald called after her, "where are you going?" She smiled that beautiful, wise smile. "Home. I have letters to write. 25 acceptance letters for this year's scholarship recipients. Those children are waiting to learn that their dreams are possible, that someone believes in them, that they matter." She walked slowly across the marble floor, her cane clicking with each step. But this time, everyone who saw her smiled. They nodded respectfully. They held doors open. They said, "Good afternoon, Mrs. Washington," with genuine warmth, because now they knew true wealth isn't measured by what you have in your pocket. It's measured by what you leave in people's hearts. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that dignity matters more than dollars, and if you believe in treating every person with respect, then, like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe so you never miss another story about courage, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right. Because stories like Dorothy's remind us we all have the power to change the world, one act of dignity at a time. Thank you for reading. Now go out there and be someone's Mrs. Washington.